And I will go live on Facebook, and then I'll mute you all. So you've got like 1 second left to chat to people.
Greetings, everybody.
Hey, Indran.
Greetings, Indran.
Take care.
I think it says we're going live, so I'm going to mute you all and hand over to Mark.
Well, hello everybody to Lit Balm's 92nd, I believe, episode. Today we are so delighted to have a feature with Aliki Barnstone, Liana Sakelliou, Joe Safdie, and Forrest Gander. Yeah, just to give you an idea of what's coming up in the future. Next weekend, the entire weekend, Saturday and Sunday, we have a Tupelo Books weekend, which includes Chloe Hunnam, Corey Van Lingdom, Maggie Queenie, Michael Haidt, Cindy Savitt, and Tyler Mills on the first day. On the second day, we have Sean Singer, Ileana Roca, Lawrence Rabb, and Nicholas Rigger-Cote. So don't miss that. That's the whole weekend, Saturday and Sunday next weekend. But keep that in the back of your mind. We'll discuss a little bit more about future shows as well at the end of the show. But right now we're focused on our principal features, which include Joe, Aliki, Liana, and Forrest. And before we commence the show, Cassandra and I will read a poem each, and also one of Jonathan's poems, since Jonathan can't make it today. In 1998, Jonathan Penton founded Unlikely Stories, an electronic journal of literature and art. Since then, he's lent his editorial and management assistance to many literary and artistic ventures, including the New Orleans Poetry Festival, Rigorous, and Big Bridge. In 2005, he founded Unlikely Books, which publishes 3 to 5 books of poetry a year. He's organized literary performances and performed himself across the United States. His poetry books are Last Chap, Blood and Salsa and Painting Rust, Prosthetic Gods, and Standards of Saturday, and also the free e-chapbook Backstories, which you can download from Argotist eBooks in Liverpool, England.
So I'm going to read a poem from Jonathan. I have to dig out. I've got his book somewhere, but I thought he was coming this morning. So I will read one off the internet called Written on the Occasion of the Marriage of Friends. I find poems like this disingenuous. Oh, look, life has disappointed me in some tangible and obvious way. Let me write a poem about it. I gently plink, plink, plink a spoon against this drink. I picture myself in a year at the wedding, shifty-eyed and restless, desiring minimal contact with the other guests, friends I've known for years, drinking very rapidly, perhaps to make an ass, oh, you say ass, right? Perhaps to make an ass of myself for whatever pleasures that is worth. Maybe not. Perhaps it is no longer my style. No one will remember it anyway. Plink and plink and plink. It's over. It was always over. It was over when it began.
And it plinked.
It's like ass. Are you ass or ass?
In America, of course, it's ass, you know.
Yeah.
I think Americans say ass, but ass has a certain gravitas.
That's right. We think of ass as donkeys sort of territory. So, yeah.
Well, you know, Queen Elizabeth, could you imagine her saying ass? It just wouldn't sound right.
It doesn't sound good without an American accent.
Yeah, we would not be amused.
So next up, we're going to hear a poem from Cassandra, who's an award-winning writer, scholar of prose poetry, and professor of writing and literature in Melbourne, Australia. Her most recent books of prose poetry are Pre-Raphaelite, Leftovers, and Fugitive Letters. Cassandra is currently writing a book of prose poetry on the atomic bomb with funding from the Australia Council. She also co-wrote Prose Poetry, An Introduction, which is an amazing book, came out with Princeton U Press. I recommend anyone read it. because it covers the whole gambit, and the anthology of Australian prose poetry. Cassandra is also commissioning editor for Westerly magazine in Australia.
Thank you. I've been commissioned to write some ekphrastic pieces, and that was mentioned a bit earlier with people writing ekphrasis, but I'm trying to push the boundaries a little bit about what ekphrastic poetry can be. And because I was involved with dance in the first part of my life, I decided to write some pieces on Bob Fosse, and that led me to the movie Cabaret. So I was asked to write some on that. So I'm just going to read a short prose poem based on one of the scenes in Cabaret. She finds the warmth of the spotlight on her skin, compresses her life into its white arc. The audience is lit by lamps and blue emanations. Their shifty movements are caught only in shadows. There's a moment at the end where she's sitting side saddle on her bentwood chair, pumping her legs and singing as the chorus girls beat their palms on the floor. It's a march, an invitation, a precursor to the goose step. She flings her arms in a wave of green nail polish, and then she takes off her hat. It's a salutation, a long-lined yielding to the end of things. I would like to introduce Mark Vincennes. You've already met and know, but he has a pretty great bio, so join in. Mark Vincennes is an Anglo-Swiss American poet, a fiction writer, translator, editor, publisher, designer, multi-genre artist, and musician. He has published 20 books of poetry, including more recently Einstein Fledermaus, The Little Book of Earthly Delights, A Brief Conversation with Consciousness, 39 Wonders and Other Management Issues, forthcoming from Spite and Dival. There Might Be a Moon or a Dog, forthcoming from Life Before Man Gazebo in Australia, and The Pearl Diver of Irumani, forthcoming from White Pine Press. An album of music, ambience, and verse, Left Hand Clapping, is forthcoming from Tree Torn Records. Vincennes is, as you know, a prolific translator, and he's been doing a lot lately, people. He's translated from the German, Romanian, and French. He's published 10 books of translations, most recently Unexpected Development by award-winning Swiss poet and novelist Klaus Mertz with White Pine in 2018, and it was a finalist for the 2016 Cliff Becker Book Prize in Translation. His translation of Klaus Mertz's selected poems in Audible Blue, which is the one he's been working on, is forthcoming from White Pine Press. He's currently working on a novel entitled The Age of Occasions. Vincennes is editor and publisher of Mad Hat Press, publisher of New American Writing. And my favorite bit, he's lived all over the world, from Brazil to Hong Kong, to China, to Iceland, to India. He was born in Matilda Hospital on the Peak in Hong Kong, but now lives on a farm in rural Western Massachusetts, overlooking Herman Melville's Greylock Mountain, and where there are more black caterpillar hunters, clay-colored billbugs, and eastern-eyed click beetles than people. Mark.
Thanks, Cassandra. So this is from the translation I'm working of Klaus Mertz's new selected poems, which starts in 1963, and we're up to 2016 now. And this is from about the mid-'80s. It's called From the School of Life. 1. On the farmsteads, foxes are lurking everywhere. One steers clear of the bitten agriculturalists. The hunters move to the city and resume the hunt. 2. The school of life begins at 3 in the morning. At 7, mostly bagatelle. 3. Whomever has still not discovered sleeplessness, that's their own fault. I always keep one eye shut in the light. That's because of the night blindness at the beginning of the lecture. 4. The truth grasps at simple sentences. One more pill after the other, one has slowly dissolved in the mouth until abatement kicks in. 5. It is more pleasurable if everyone on the boat sinks. 6. They who are expecting insist on their own veracity. 7. Friendly villagers rise upon toxic waste. Where I once was, thus it should be again. 8. The electrical industry proposes planting plums instead of pears, a brand spanking new natural documentary. 9. From the suburban kids' hutch, the bugle announces death to rabbits, death to rabbits. 10. My brother once wrote, one should have been born old in order to die young. 11. A turncoat presses his face onto his mirror image. It feels divided. 12. Anteaters burrow under the skin. 13. Naturally, everybody dreams of a masterpiece and rests on the seventh day. 14. A trade in hand finds gold in every land. The post office offers commemorative stamps on this theme. 15. With an eye on the zebra crossing, go, lie, walk, better broad band. 16. That can happen, the loser said by the by, and the winner is bleeding from the nose. 17. That feeling of belonging in open spaces has hung on a nail for quite some time. It would like to be worn from time to time. 18. His search for meaning increasingly equaled two quadratic growing moles on a rounded naked bum like the Po River. 19. Every morning, our animal love walks barefoot through the dog park. 20. To present the windfall to the downfall without falter. 21. The guilty want to confess, but no one takes their confession. Thus, they move on, heavily burdened as they are. 22. Cold burns upward from your kneecap. 23. In the corner of the bistro, two old giggling folk slip each other their world under the table. 24. There are cultural investigations being undertaken on mundane germs. Snow lies on car bumpers. 25. That insight into the thinking mind while photographing deep into that glowing ball of sun. It's only photos who don't lose their memory. 26. They who don't hit the mark with the first shot are exposed to their friend. 27. Once again, those noises from the irons knocking against each other. In the coming night, I want to sink a shaft into the very core of the earth's warming heart. 28. In the sled factory, snow hangs from the roof. The wrought iron is cooked. 29. Even the experienced would loved to be described. 30. Behind the horizon, angels are laying eggs in the air. Thank you. And yeah, that's all Klaus Mertz and my attempt at bringing his translations to life in English. But here we go with the feature. And I am delighted to present to you both Aliki Barnstone and Liana Sakelliou. Aliki is a poet, translator, critic, editor, and visual artist. She is the author of 9 books of poetry. The most recent are Dwelling from Sheep Meadow, and Liana's translation of her Eva's Voice into Greek forthcoming from Vahikon Publications in Athens in this year. She's translated 2 book-length collections from modern Greek, the collected poems of C.P. Caffey from Norton in 2006, and Liana Sakelliou's Portrait Before Dark, just released from St. Julian Press. With her father, Willis, she co-edited a book of women poets from antiquity to now, which has come out in several editions, which remains the most comprehensive anthology of international women's poetry in English. Among Aliki's awards are a Senior Fulbright Fellowship in Greece, the Silver Pen Award from the Nevada Writers Hall of Fame, and a Peninsula Council on the Arts Fellowship in Poetry. She is Professor of English and Creative Writing at the University of Missouri and served as Poet Laureate of Missouri from 2016 to 2019. And Liana Sakelliou is one of Greece's foremost literary figures, a poet, translator, critic, and editor. She's the author of 21 books of poetry, most recently Portrait Before Dark, translated by Aliki, Alchemy of Cells in a Painting Atelier from Linnea in Bucharest, a bilingual edition in Greek and Romanian of her selected poems, and Sequentiae from Gutenberg in Athens. She is the translator into modern Greek of Emily Dickinson and H.D., among many others. Her awards are 2 Fulbright fellowships in the US, the Stanley Seeger Visiting Research Fellowship at Princeton, and a residency at West Dean College, University of Sussex, where she wrote Portrait. She is professor of English and creative writing at the National and Kabistotrian University of Athens, and teaches international poetry and creative writing at the Takis Sinopoulos Foundation. She served as a member of the board of the Hellenic Authors Society and as president for the European Prize for Literature. I hand it over to you two. You got to unmute yourselves, guys.
Unmute. Hi. So we were just going to read from Portrait Before Dark, and this is a portion of the cover behind me, but we were invited to read some of my poems. And so Liana, I want to change it up just a little bit. I want to start with On the Secret Shore. And then, so I won a second Fulbright recently, and it's to work with Liana individually and collectively with Liana on poems about the Greek military junta. And so the poems of mine that are coming out in Greece this June. We won't read all of them bilingually, but I'll first read this one that's from the Junta project. So our plan is we have each written poems about living under the junta when we were kids, and now we're going to try to embark on a collaborative sort of prose poem project, Cassandra. So anyway, this is The Secret Shore, and it's after George Safaris. On the secret shore, where am I? What century? What dark decade beating fear into our bodies? At night, the jasmine star blossoms rise like sea spray over stone walls to meet galaxies crowning church domes, and the smell, no, the redolence ferries me to that free space where my eyelids aren't nervous, alert to warnings small as splinters of glass, the stealth, the too quiet breath of secret police. How long the hours knowing the swarm of bugs that render speech less than a whisper, more than an engine's rumble, the power station that interrupts generous orchards, gardens of tomatoes and grapes, amaranth and zucchini, whitewashed dovecots and chapels, ancient refuge, land and labor, offering up nourishment all the way to the port where we push 4 tables together and sing politics, our forbidden anthems, loved names disappearing in sand beneath the wavelets' froth. So that's a poem from the project, the current Fulbright project. So this was my Fulbright project before writing in the voice of a Sephardic Jew from Thessaloniki who survives the Holocaust because her family is able to buy false Christian identities, which is something that actually happened. But this is an imaginary poet, Eva Victoria Pereira. And so I'll read Market Song, and then Liana will read the translation, which is actually kind of, Market Song is kind of a translation of what the market is like into English. So it's, and then we'll see how it goes, how much time we have. Okay, Liana, Market Song. Come on, ladies, come on, girls, come taste my olives, my little black pearls. Come on, buy greens from my fields. Hey, my eyes, hey, my soul, forget your grief. Everything's fresh, fresh, fresh. I've got arugula and spinach leaf, freesia, red lettuce, celery, parsley, basil, dill. I've got the best quality, hey, little girls, the best deals if you will buy from me. Wheel your cart over here, my sweetheart. Just pick today, today, today. Rosy grapes, black grapes, green grapes. Once we Greeks were slaves. Now we've escaped all that. Hey, lovely girls, look all so good. Once our lives in Greece were poor. Look here, fresh fruit right off the tree. Smell my oranges, my sweet pears, 3 kinds of apples and sticky black figs. Come on, ladies, come on, good wives, come to my stall. Look at all I have. Sharpest knives, mops and brooms, coffee pots and socks, dustbins, dish towels and tablecloths, underwear, t-shirts, blouses, beautiful scarves. Hey, ladies, hey, girls, once all of us starved. And what did you eat today? And what will you cook? Come look, I have flowers, flowers, flowers. Come on, my golden one, my soul, my eyes. See these pinks in pots for your garden? They attract butterflies. Come, take my flowers for your table. I picked them today, today, today. No more slaves, no more lies. Come on, darling. Come on, my soul. Eat my souvlaki hot from the coals. Listen, my sweethearts, my golden ones. Long ago, soldiers showed you their guns and took your jewels in the busiest city square. Hey, ladies. Hey, little girls. Today, all's for sale in the open air.
Τραγούδι της Λαϊκής. Ελάτε κορίες μου, ελάτε κορίτσια μου, ελάτε να φάτε τις ελιές μου, τα μαύρα μαργαριταράκια μου. Ελάτε να αγοράσετε χόρτα από τα χωράφια μου, ματάκια μου, ψυχούλα μου, διώξε τη λύπη. Εδώ είναι όλα φρέσκα, φρέσκα, φρέσκα. Έχω σπανάκι, έχω ρόκα, φρέζιες, κόκκινα λάχανα, σέλινο, μαϊντανό, βασιλικό και άνηθο. Έχω τα καλύτερα, για ελάτε κορίτσια. Αν πάρετε από μένα θα πάρετε τα καλύτερα. Αγαπούλα, για φέρε το καρότσι σου εδώ. Τα κόψα σήμερα, σήμερα, σήμερα. Στα φύλλα κόκκινα, στα φύλλα μαύρα, στα φύλλα κίτρινα. Παλιά οι Έλληνες ήμασταν σκλάβοι, μα τώρα τους ξεφύγαμε. Ομορφιές μου, για δέστε τι όμορφα όλα που είναι. Κάποτε εμείς οι Έλληνες πεθαίναμε από τη φτώχεια. Για δέστε φρούτα, μόλις που τα κόψα από το δέντρο. Για μυρίστε τα πορτοκάλια μου, τις γλύκες, τα χλάδια μου. 3 είδη μήλα και μαύρα σίκα σιροπιαστά. Για ελάτε κυρίες, για ελάτε καλές μου κυρίες. Ελάτε στον πάγκο μου να δείτε την πραμάτια μου. Μαχαίρια μητερά και σφουγγαρόπανα και σκούπες και μπρίκια του καφέ και κάλτσες. Τραπεζομάντιλα, πετσέτες, ξεσκονόπανα, εσώρουχα, μπλουζάκια, πουκάμισα, πανέμορφα μαντίλια. Κυρίες μου, κορίτσια μου, παλιά πεθαίναμε απ' την πείνα. Και τι έφαγε σήμερα και τι μαγείρεψε σήμερα. Για δέστε, έχω λουλούδια, λουλούδια, λουλούδια. Έλα χρυσούλα μου, έλα ψυχούλα μου, έλα ματάκια μου, για κοίτα τα γαρίφαλα στις γλάστρες για τον μποστάνι σου. Μαζεύουν πεταλούδες. Πάρ' τα λουλούδια για το τραπέζι σου, τα κόψα σήμερα, σήμερα, σήμερα. Όχι πια σκλάβοι, όχι πια ψέματα, έλα αγαπούλα μου, έλα ψυχούλα μου, φάει καυτό απ' τη χόβολη σουβλάκι. Ακούστε αγαπούλες μου, ακούστε με χρυσά μου. Παλιά οι στρατιώτες σας έδειχναν τα όπλα τους και τα χρυσαφικά σας έκλεβαν στην κεντρική πλατεία. Κυρίες μου, κορίτσια μου, όλα πουλιούνται σήμερα και σε διπλή τιμή ευκαιρίας.
Very good. So I think it'll be too much time for me to read, for us to do these. The poems of mine are a little longer, so I'll read the Blue House because I think it's an important poem to read at this moment with the war in Ukraine going on and people having to flee. So I'll read The Blue House. It's based on the painting by Chagall called The Blue House. The Blue House. I can see a long way up here where the blue house is balanced on a bluff yellow with late summer fields that extend to the city. You can see me, for the door and the windows are open to air. I sit in a chair and hold a cup of tea. Or is that you I see inside? And is that me running downhill away from the house on the path lined with hip-high wheat? Looming larger above me, the closer I come, is the jumble of buildings, a white cross atop each sky blue dome, the church enclosed by Byzantine battlements. Is that figure below the cathedral almost too small to see, raising an arm toward the city in joy, or turning back to wave goodbye to the house? Why does the modest cottage seem so isolated from town? Why is it painted such a radiant blue? The wood looks like the glass of the evil eye, and the planes aren't square, but ramshackle. The foundation is shored up against the hill on the brink. I can see the danger now. And yet the blue house invites us to look in, enter, have a seat, and drink a cup of tea that tastes too beautiful on the tongue when you exclaim, ah, the view. The house was not blue. My memory painted it the color of the morning sea. Look, out there, far from shore, the fisherman is disappearing in his orange boat that floats along a gray smear of light, marring the sapphire depths. In the impossible pigment is the day we have to leave for good to find other refuge. No, the house was not a hue in nature, sea or sky, or precious stone. It was a color made by human hands, like a stone. I'm sorry, I made a mistake. That's funny. It's supposed to be, it was a color made by human hands like a home. But I think I'm, that was a kind of a sadness about what's, about the repetition of history that made me say stone instead of home. Okay. Liana, should we move on to yours and mine?
Sure.
Okay, because we're going off script, so yeah.
So the poem cycle that we are going to read is an imaginary dialogue between the poet and patron of the arts, Edward James, and the eccentric Viennese ballerina and star of the 20s, Tilly Loche. I began writing these poems in August 2009, when I was serving as writer-in-residence at West Dean College in West Sussex, England. 3 days before I was to leave for the UK, a wildfire surrounded my home and neighborhood. In minutes, the pine forest and hillside olive groves were lost. For days, my suitcase and the clothes I'd packed smelled of smoke. Edward James, the Anglo-American millionaire, gave his estate to a charitable trust, the Edward James Foundation, which includes the mansion, West Dean House, where the college is located. I sat on the satin Mae West Lips sofa, one of Salvador Dali's surrealist sculptures, and read James's poems. He seemed to know everyone of his age. He spoke to Freud, new members of the Bloomsbury group, and was one of the most generous English patrons of the arts in the early 20th century. In 1933, during his marriage to Loche, James funded Le Ballet 1930, which was the foundation for his American ballet company. Their marriage from 1930 to 1934 was short and disastrous, and their divorce was a scandal in London society. In 1937, Magritte painted two faceless portraits of James. The Pleasure Principle, portrait of Edward James, and Not to be Reproduced, to which I refer in my poems. The setting of West Dean seemed made for children, with topiary birds and spirals, lush flowers, conservatories, and sheep one could pet. I saw portraits of the James family, as well as photos of Edward and Tilly walking through the palace corridors. I like their faces, their poses, and I wanted to write quiet, allusive poems that speak through their voices. The English woodlands serve as a flexible space in which the spaciousness of love merges with the conflicting emotions that the poems call into question.
So I'm going to read in English and Liana will read in Greek, and then I'll have some prose in between. You'll be able to distinguish between the prose and the poetry, I think. And Liana will go back to our original where we don't read all of them bilingually, so to make up for the time we spent on the couple of poems of mine, okay? Indaxi?
Sure.
So I'll just keep reading, and then we'll go back to the original idea. Okay. Once more, music splits the air, and I'm afraid. Shall I dance fear? Shall I temper its vanity? Comets slice through dense leaves. Enormous tree trunks light up and snap. I recall when I thought we would be safe.
Πάλι η μουσική εκτρέπει τον αέρα και εγώ σκιάζομαι. Να χορέψω τον φόβο, να μετριάσω την έπαρσή του. Μετεωρίτες σκίζουν φυλλώματα, πελώριοι κορμοί αστράφτουν και σπάνε. Θυμάμαι κάποτε σκεφτόμουν πως θα ήμασταν ασφαλείς.
Much like Emily Dickinson in HD, whose work she translates magnificently, Liana Sakelliou is a poet of the ineffable. Hers, a feminist vision made palpable in the world of her poetry. Portrait Before Dark is and is not the story of Edward James and Tilly Loche's marriage and dissolution. It's about how the story is told, whose voice soars above the forest, and whose voice resists convention, which for women is too often a form of silencing. You can tell sundry stories about the same ways of making a life, the natural charm of the king, the mother, and their friends in photos along the corridor's walls. They sink behind the grove, committed to the dark earth. I can't discern the woods from the animals passing by, the bloodied ferns, the thudding in the foliage. It's about being in love and losing oneself in another person. It's about reclaiming the self. It's about the urge to bring children into the world and the choice not to. It's about the journey into the forest and about the earth. It's about climate change. No longer do I see the trees. I see your thoughts. A change of weather spreads over the forest. Birds glide. Night falls.
Δεν βλέπω πια τα δέντρα, βλέπω τη σκέψη σου. Η αλλαγή του καιρού απλώνεται στο δάσος. Τα πουλιά μετεωρίζονται. Νυχτώνει.
It's the 20th century. It's the 21st century. It doesn't stay fixed in time. Time drives you around with all its omens, and you're touched by the thread of a new story. Without a doubt, it moves you.
Παρασύρεσαι από τον χρόνο με όλες τις ενδείξεις του. Αγγίζεσαι από τον μύτο μιας νέας αφήγησης. Αναμφίβολα σε συγκινεί.
It's England, it's Greece, it's everywhere, nowhere. You mount the stairs into myth. All I have to tell you is lost. I watch your torso's form, head tilted back, green eyes half closed. It's your choreography when you open the door, stretch out your hand, and I enter the woods in slow motion at your side. So too, do these lines of poetry form the stairs, climb them, and rise protean into a new mythology. It's about the trees. It's not about a subject, but embodies subjectivity. Let's go back to the trees. The trees are a major actor in Portrait Before Dark. Raw refusal blows between us like temptation, like condemned castles. The anticipation of place is struggle. The forest refuses nothing, not even this. The forest. Oh, yeah, go.
Ακατέργαστη άρνηση πνέει ανάμεσά μας σαν πειρασμός, σαν απόκληρα κάστρα. Η προσμονή του χώρου ένας αγώνας. Τίποτα δεν αρνείται το δάσος, ούτε κι αυτό.
The forest and the creatures it shelters have agency beyond human perception, even as human actions destroy it. The forest will know to be tender with me. When asked what happened to you, the answer is, a bizarre tree electrified me. Sakelliou's apocalyptic vision critiques the brutality of patriarchal wealth. Edward proclaims, something rises like smoke, and loosing its smelly musk, a red fox crosses the woods. Its tail catches fire. I'm a good shot.
Κάτι ανεβαίνει σαν καπνός και αχνοβολώντας μια κόκκινη αλεπού διασχίζει το δάσος. Η ουρά της πιάνει φωτιά. Είμαι καλός σκοπευτής.
In this scene of smoke and fire, the wounded red fox is not just pitiable, wrenching our hearts, but it is the beautiful, magical, and vulnerable animal sacrificed for sport for the hunter's bragging rights. Perhaps this fox will be taken to the taxidermist and join the other woodland creatures decorating the halls of the castle. I can't help but feel that Tilly left the marriage to escape becoming a trophy. She half muses, half taunts. You watch me straightening my pleats, tying ribbons around my calves, and you pass into timelessness, waiting for me to close my eyes. I was once your wife, rich man. What did it mean? A titillating show, a vortex in your years. You did not beckon, did not speak. You still don't say a word. Edward isn't merely the bad guy here. Portrait Before Dark is far too nuanced for that kind of dichotomous thinking. He finds himself playing a role to him assigned by the accident of birth that conferred upon him wealth, privilege, and the tools and weapons to defend the way of life and death of his ancestors. Liana composed Portrait Before Dark in the aftermath of the wildfires that consumed her neighborhood in 2009. Every year we have borne witness to worsening drought, record heat, and wildfires. One summer, after visiting and working with Liana, I left Poros via the longer ferry route because the highway to Athens was impassable due to fire. The air was full of smoke and ash that floated above the sea, reflecting gray rather than blue. Last summer, Liana and her family had to evacuate their home north of Athens, and I could not return with my family to ours a few kilometers away. The sublime beauty of our motherland is burning away, the wide beaches disappearing. Greece, like Ukraine, like other small countries, is the fox, vulnerable to the actions and inactions of the superpowers. Our motherland isn't only Greece, it's everyone's motherland. Here, translated for all of you, wherever you are, is our exquisite, sad, hopeful, shared portrait before dark. I wear sunglasses with owl frames. You have a robe wrapped around you, our honeymoon. Something in the emptiness, a light life streams above the other life. Only in brokenness does the light come in, love from far away. The sea draws us to this. We don't know what we expose.
Φορώ γυαλιά ηλίου με σκελετό κουκουβάγιας. Είσαι τυλιγμένος σε ένα μπουρνούζι, ο μήνας του μέλιτος. Υπάρχει κάτι στο κενό. Αχνίζει ανάλαφρη ζωή, πάνω απ' την άλλη. Μόνο σε ό,τι σπάζει φαίνεται το φως. Αγάπη με τρόπο απόμακρο. Η θάλασσα μας τραβά προς αυτό. Δεν γνωρίζουμε τι ξεσκεπάζουμε.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aliki and Liana. That was just gobsmacking.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We
So,
really appreciate
You're
the
kind.
invitation and the attention. Thank you.
and also the Greek was amazing. You know, even though I could only understand a few words here and there.
The music is fabulous, isn't it? You understand a few words because so much, so many words in English come from the Greek. So you get the music and those little flashes of cognition, of lexical cognition.
Well, I speak pretty decent Spanish, and I recall occasionally over the years having been in an airport or somewhere and hearing someone speaking from a distance and kind of the intonation of Spanish and Greek. There's some kind of similarity in the song,
Absolutely, the phonetics are the same.
Yeah, it just strikes this kind of like home signal, which is kind of unbelievable. And you want to learn Greek after you listen to Liana.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you so much.
I agree.
Thank you so much for the invitation also. Thank you, Aliki, for the lovely work.
Thank you both. And next we hear from Joe Safdie, whose latest book of poems is The Oregon Trail from Spite and Dival. The same press also will publish a hybrid chapbook, poetry and prose this year, called The Secular Divine. A book of selected essays, poetry and heresy will be published in 2023 by Mad Hat Press and include essays on Charles Olson, Edward Dorn, and Amil Alaki. Previous books and their publishers include Mary Shelley's Surfboard from Blue Press, Scholarship from Blazevox, and Coastal Zone from Spite and Dival. Joe's own trail to Oregon included stops in California, most recently in San Diego, where he taught English literature and creative writing, in Colorado, in Boulder, in Washington, in Seattle, and the Czech Republic. Now in Portland, he's studying the language of trees, which is a very interesting language, especially when you go into the sort of whole fungal network beneath them. His talk on Charles Olson and Brooks Adams for the American Literature Association is available on YouTube, and he'll give a talk on William Blake for the Center of Myth, Cosmology, and the Sacred on June 7. Don't miss that. Other poems, essays, and reviews can be found on Jacket 2, Caesura, Dispatches from the Poetry Wars, and many other journals and periodicals. Welcome, Joe. Are you unmuted? No, I think not. You've got to unmute yourself.
Got it now. Thanks. And thank you for that introduction. Thank you all for being here. I'm very grateful to be reading today with such distinguished poets, but especially Liana and Aliki, as a large part of my work has always been a conversation with Greek mythology. So I saw that little Greek bust on the desk behind you, Liana. That's perfect. I want to start with some poems from an early book, as Mark was reading some early poems of his. This is called Saturn Return, and I believe that one of the only remaining copies in existence is this one right here, with illustrations by the great artist Arthur Okamura. So this book, a chapbook, confuses the myth of Saturn with the astrological Saturn with my own father. So a few bits from that book. Visions of Saturn. I close my eyes and I see it. All it is a ring of steel, a lion jumping through a hoop, a picture of an old man in an old-fashioned frame. I close my eyes and I see it. It's paradise, the world surrounded by a halo, a basketball through a hoop, a cord around a bushel of wheat. It's what holds me back, the boundary beyond which I'm forbidden to wander. It's the noose around my neck. Saturn's influence. We're standing in a line on stage, your hands on my shoulders, pushing me down. The audience is restless. They want to be entertained. It's your turn to speak. This is my son, Joseph, you say. Your immigrant voice, a foreign vibration in a sea of American chatter. The audience starts laughing. I can't see you, want to drown from the shame, feel the same grip on my shoulders, constant, keeping me up. Saturn's illness. Some family, brothers with 50 heads, sisters with 100 arms. It's no wonder you thought you had to eat me, but I forgive your appetite. I know how fear makes you stuff yourself so when you throw up, you can throw up the pain, but it never works. Those skinny women on Rodeo Drive scare me more than your stomach ever did. Let's try it again. I cut off your balls and throw them as far as I can. They explode when they hit the water, and a beautiful woman rises out of a shell. I think you know that woman. I see you in her eyes, watch her struggle sometimes beneath your lids. I'm there too. We're actors in a play about love. Somebody else is speaking. We're just waiting. And one more from that book. In the old days, it was easy. The father appeared from out of the mist, groaned a little, and instructed the son how properly to avenge his tragic death. There were a lot of swell sound effects, a little wailing, but destiny was clear. Now the actors wander all over the set, forget their lines, forget why they even took the part. The rewards are reduced to a government check in the mail, which keeps us happy, the untranslatable language. Shadows aren't important. We can't see anything inside. Sometimes we strain our eyes. Look, can you see anything? But everyone's gotten tired of pretending they do. Once it was smoggy and I couldn't breathe. I sat back under a tree and put my face to the ground, scared of my dizziness. When all the images stopped, I heard your voice. So to continue with the Greeks a little bit, I want to go immediately to The Oregon Trail, my latest book. And I'm going to read from a section called Hermes the Thief. Hermes the Thief honors my old friend and professor, Norman O'Brown. Rob, I think I saw you in the audience today. Hope you're okay. Hermes the Thief, one of 4 or 5 fabulous books by Norman, is worth checking out. It starts with an epigraph from E.R. Dodds in a book called The Greeks and the Irrational. The recognition, the insight, the memory, the brilliant idea have this in common, that they come suddenly, as we say, into a man's head. Often he is conscious of no observation or reasoning which has led up to them. But in that case, how can we call them his? Hermes the Thief. Poetry and magic, not the Spicer Circle, but the realm of Hermes, elusive, mercurial, kicking up chalk on the foul line. A dream address, everyone is there, already broken into groups, not chosen by lots. The lecture hadn't yet begun. If everything we see is someone else's spell, sleight of hand, card tricks, when the world is the cards. To the accusation of theft, Hermes would ask, what is ownership? Hermes also commerce, intersection of ideas, 3 forks in the road. I was the cashier at my father's clothing store. Seed is soul. Muse sing Hermes, the childish, the petulant, taking pleasure in misfortune, the primitive, the phallic, the conniver, the magician, Autolycus with a god's quickness, the secretive, the scam, the musician, pre-Olympian, Titanic roots. Atlas was his grandfather. The erect phallus, a magic wand to turn away harm, god of primitive trade, rituals at the boundary. Let there be commerce between us. Hermes allows us to receive messages from gods and other strangers, translating foreign tongues, evading walls, buying and selling at the border. Both this and that, neither this nor that. Coyote, serpent, deceitful only if wedded to a position, any position. The necessity of deception in all human activity. Therefore, I lie with her and she with me, in constant revolt against reigning dispensations. Trickery means being alive, not stealing, but revealing. All writers work in secret, and any secret action is magic, a god of moments. He just moves. You can't get a fix on him, standing outside the armed camps of the gods. And that section ends with this short message. Hermes' last trick in the Iliad was spiriting Priam behind enemy lines to reclaim his son's body, giving humans a great gift, the full weight of their misery. So I don't want to take up too much time, and I want to leave time for Forrest and the open mic section. So I'll close with just two more short poems. Again, staying with the Greek theme. This is called Praise for the Muses. And it comes from a talk that I gave about the Muses for the Center for Myth Cosmology and the Sacred, for whom I'm talking about Mr. Blake next month. So praise for the Muses. The thing about ancient poetry is that it wasn't just poetry. We're a long way away from those times. Those times were too. The Muses are invisible, but allow us to sing while they dance, covered in mist at the boundary of oral and written. Among the more ancient powers, singing and dancing, older parts of the brain, a party at the beginning of written language, memory shattered by thunder. The lyre quenches the thunderbolt, soothes Zeus's eagle to sleep. Even the god of war is pacified. When the Muses dance, stately, measured, it's possible to imagine virtue, order. They're not maenads, but resemble sirens. Don't you want to hear their sweet singing? Gold hairbands, gold sandals, handsome houses, clear-eyed, sweet, light, harmonious, not themselves called wise. Terpsichore at my wedding, but also at Smiley's. You're a good dancer, she said with surprise. And bumping asses with that redheaded secretary at a work party and at the community center with the woman who would become my wife, gliding across the floor to sexual healing. And then one more. This is a tribute to my friend Kent Johnson. Hello, Kent. This was part of a collection organized a few weeks ago by the poet Billy Chernikoff, who I think is also here this afternoon. So hello to both of you. And thanks to all of you for being here. This is for Kent. I once met the great poet satirist Kent Johnson. It was in the Museum of the Future, what people used to call heaven. I wasn't particularly surprised to see him gliding down the hallways on roller skates, as I always knew he was on the side of the angels, but was mildly amused when he made a graceful pirouette to whisper to a rocky Yasusada. I think I heard him say, "Can you believe people used to take the author function seriously? But language sounds different there and has a different grammar, so don't take my word for it." Later, I saw him sharing a bottle of Retsina with Alexandra Papaditsas, his co-translator on The Misery of Poetry. When I reviewed that book a long time ago, I wrote, "A lot of indignant nonsense has been written about Kent Johnson's poetic projects by correspondents who forget that what's true in 3 dimensions may not be true in 4 or 11. Back then, I remember that Kent's books were between Laura Jensen and Alistair Johnston on my bookshelves. And one day I asked myself, who is Laura Jensen? Why did I get this book of poems? Which is exactly what people are thinking now about me, if I'm even on their bookshelves, and maybe even most of the writers I valued back then, like Michael Bond and Billy Chernikoff, Margie Cronin, Patrick Dunnigan, Andre Spears. So much for the author function. What I was surprised about was that Kent had put on a few pounds. Maybe being a constant gadfly had made him into a nervous wreck, like some avant-garde speed freak addicted to Facebook. And the museum, with its strict rules against ideologies of any sort, had allowed him the luxury of finally achieving that pneumatic state of mind Papaditsas had written about in Miseries, an active openness to divine intuition. Or maybe not. The museum is special. I try to describe it, but wouldn't do it justice. It's not like a trout stream or the Southern Mountains or even the Skyview Bar in his last book, where he discussed the ancient Chinese Tang poets with Chen Li. Of course, our poetic jealousy and competition knows no bounds, he said then. What has become of poetry's noble line? Yet here he was, a huge part of that line, happy and cheerful after all those years in the trenches. Life is strange. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joe. Yeah. Life is strange after all those years in the trenches. I believe Forrest has not managed to join us in person yet. He promised he would around this time, but either way, I'm going to introduce him, and we have some things to show you anyway. Forrest Gander is a writer-translator with degrees in geology, and literature. He was born in the Mojave Desert and lives in Northern California. His 20+ books, often concerned with ecology, include Twice Alive, Be With, and the novel The Trace. Forrest's recent translations include It Must Be a Misunderstanding by Coral Bracho, Spectacle and Pigsty by Hiwao Nomura, Best Translated Book Award, and Then Come Back, The Lost Neruda Poems. Forrest has been honored with a Pulitzer Prize and has received grants from the Library of Congress, the Guggenheim, Howard Whitting, and United States Artists Foundations. Shall we commence with the show, Cassandra? What do you think?
Let's do it. All right.
Hi, I'm Forrest Gander. I'm glad to be with Lit Balm, with Mark and Cassandra and Jonathan. And we've got a couple poetry videos, 3 of them to share with you. Thanks for watching.
Okay, now we've got a couple of clips that he sent us.
Some funky stuff there, believe me.
You know, IT is not my strong point, but we're almost there. Good. Here we go.
Behind it all, the ratcheting arterial pulse of machinery. My pupils are fixed in place, as though by needles, on the task at hand. At hand, synovials of tungsten filament, contact wire, gas-filled glass bulbs, and orchestral clinking, until, as though called forth from my collective hours of concentration, some afterbirth of monotony, the unpredicted enters the room like a pair of gods sheathed in silence, miracles of precarity, rupturing the membrane between habit and dream. He with his swiveling step, she pulling back her shoulders. Their inner stillness adds magnanimity to their motions, uncanny, pre-hypnotic, incomprehensible. Mustard flowers waving in a charred field. How can I look away? My eyes have no lids. If I grant them just a minute of my attention, I wonder if I could emerge from what has shattered inside me.
Well, that was clearly in a Chinese factory somewhere. No doubt about that. I don't think Forrest has made it so far, so let's go on with the next one. We're not seeing the video, Cassandra?
Oh, really?
No. We're just hearing the, oh, there we go.
I'll flatten out.
Yeah.
I think it's on slow motion or something like that. Might be the signal over on your side.
That's not Forrest, is it?
Actually, I think it is.
Immigrant C. Aroused by her inaccessibility, he aches for more of her life to live inside him. Watching the breakers standing so close he can feel heat coming off her wet scalp. What is his relation to this person before him, so familiar and foreign? The way he searches out her face, he searches out himself. Gusts thrash crests of swell, spring grasses twirl circles in the sand where they stand without speaking. She wants him to know it's all charged, even grass, positive, pollen, negative. So when grass waves, it sweeps the air for pollen. He feels electricity all around, as though the wild drama of the coming storm were already aware of them, foreigners on this shore. Little sapphire blue flowers speckle the dunes. He wonders if he has let himself flatten out into a depthless sheet like escalator stairs, whether in the end he'll disappear underground without the smallest lurch of resistance. But when her lavish face turns toward him, beaming, the corners of her eyes wind wet, he yields to that excess. He reappears to himself.
And
I think we have one more.
Yeah.
Wasteland for Santa Rosa. Green spring grass on the hills had cured by June, and by July gone woolly and brown. It crackled underfoot, desiccated, while within the clamor of live oaks, an infestation of tiny larvae clung to the underleaves, feeding between the veins. Their frass, that fine dandruff of excrement and boring dust, tinkled as it dropped onto leaves below the limbs. You could hear it 20 feet away, tinkling. Across the valley on Sugarloaf Ridge, the full moon showed up like a girl doing cartwheels. No one goes on living the life that isn't there. Below a vast column of smoke, heat, flame, and wind, I rose, swaying and tottering on my erratic vortex, extemporizing my own extreme weather, sucking up acres of scorched topsoil and spinning it outward in a burning sleet of filth and embers that catapulted me forward with my mouth open in every direction at once. So I came for you, turning the present into purgatory, because I need to turn everything to tragedy before I can see it, because it must be leavened with remorse for the feeling to rise.
There we go.
Yeah, all right. Pretty powerful stuff, you know.
Yeah, I'd like him here in person, but I understand. Did you say he's at Sonoma or something like that?
Sonoma Poetry Festival. He said he'd be here, but you know, he probably got caught up somewhere on a cocktail or something like that.
If it was me, I'd be caught up on a cocktail. I can tell you that. Or 10. But so, we have a stellar open mic.
Yeah, we do. But before we go to the open mic, let me recap what's coming up. So next weekend we have the Tupelo Books Festival, which includes, I think, 10 authors. But please do join us for that. It's both Saturday and Sunday. And then the Saturday after that, we have Indran Methiagam, Kashina Singh, Anita Nadal, and Sophia Naz, all from the Asian continent. And then on Saturday, May 21, we have the Perfume Show with Megan Volpert, Henry Hoke, Donna Della Pierre, and Moira Egan. And the weekend after that, that's Saturday, May 28th, we have Mary Jo Bang, Charles Fort, Kate Gale, and Fred Marchant. So please do join us for those. And there are many more exciting shows coming up. But in the meantime, I'm going to pass it over to Cassandra to have a wonderful open mic.
Yeah, in the meantime, there's exciting open mic, which always revitalizes me and makes me excited because I don't have to work any videos or do any IT. I can just listen to the wonderful poetry from our open micers. And the first person is Kevin, and I'm actually dying to hear some of Kevin's work. So Kevin, can we hear something from you? You might have to unmute.
Great. It's great to see everyone. Especially great to see everyone because I've been locked up on my 3rd floor for about a week with a pretty bad case of COVID. And so I haven't seen anyone, even my family. I feel like Anne Frank, they're downstairs, but I can't see them. I'm going to read out of my new book called The Wild Goose. And because Joe was reading some related to his pop, I'll read one of mine. Those summer Saturdays. Saturdays too. My dad woke up early, put on his grass-stained Sperry topsiders, his green Bermudas with paint stains and whales, then took the entire day to mow the lawn. He'd snap open and fire up a Zippo, then mow 2 perfect rows with a Salem Menthol 100 shrinking from his mouth. Time to take a break for a Miller Lite, to turn up Ken Coleman for the Red Sox score, to shout it out for everyone to know. He'd save the empty cans to be redeemed, then light another butt for 2 more rows. 1 lawn, 3 packs, and a case in a day. And what did I know? What did I know? Thank you.
That was fantastic. What a powerful end. And what did I know? What did I know? Wonderful. I really loved that. I'm sorry that you're locked up on the 3rd floor. I hope the rest of your family don't get COVID. So it's probably worth it if they don't. But yeah, that's troubling. Thank you. The next person we have is Philip. So Philip, can you unmute and please read?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. This is called Pastoral. I want to say something beneficent about the goddamn yellow irises, the way they labor to unroll their root rug over the smooth stones beneath the surface of the koi pond, how they stab the air with green spears and shove a chalice into the garden air, spilling their sickly sweetness there. That's the best I can do, really, to laud the annual reminder of the year-round invasion, the amphibious assault launched from the east and west shorelines of the 12-foot bowl of water fed by a mechanical mountain stream. A phalanx of wrist-thick roots marches inexorably from the sides of the pond. Tendrils, fibrous scouts crawl ahead, feeling and leading the way. The blooms flare, signaling the mass divisions to persist in their lusty advance. And about the fucking ants, I have even fewer charitable thoughts. Yes, their industry is the stuff of children's books, like inchworms, but crunchier. They are tenacious, and one could say the same of the pond-conquering irises. But watching them swarm the face of the Minerva head planter pour over the concrete brow from the sand they've ferried into the plant hole where her brain would be, spread the grains of their kingdom along the stone bank of the aforementioned faux stream, I see another battle with nature brewing, not a huge one, but one with my refusal to poison any part of this half acre of earth I am bound to lose. Yet spending the day fighting a hopeless battle yields some pleasure. Hope that the queen will accept the workers' tribute of a moistened grain of meal so that it swells and explodes in whatever one might call her belly. And reaching with blind and ungloved hands into muddy water with the soup of scum I've stirred with my boots, fingers grabbing whatever they can find, roots, layers of winter leaves burping their noxious gases into bubbles that cling to the hairs on my shins, frog shit and small black jackets of dying tadpoles. I remember a movie, Wind Across the Everglades, in which a vicious old poacher paddling a boat through the swamp reaches into the water and sticks his hand into the fangs of a cottonmouth. Don't get me started about the snakes.
That was wonderful, really stirring. My favorite bit was the koi pond, and your dog barking in the background in appreciation was kind of lovely as well. And I know I'm not allowed to say this because I'm Australian, but you have an awesome accent as well. There's so many good accents at Lit Balm. But I loved the way you read that. It was really intriguing. Thank you. Thank you. The next person we have is Linda. Linda, come on down.
Hello. Happy to be here again, and I appreciate people who read, and that Lit Balm is going to have Tupelo Press, which is about 10 miles down the road from me.
You're 10 down. You're like down the road from everyone, it seems.
Yeah, and I'm remote, believe it or not. Okay, so I have a little short one. It's a little out there, but you know, you have to do that once in a while. Ether's cobwebs. How intriguing your words appear. They form nuanced phrases, intentional enticements. A vortex spins your words into ether's cobwebs. I recognize that the words are yours when I drift nearby. Ether knows to reinterpret your words into an intricate language, one of hope, song, sun, moon, twinkling starlight. The strength of my soul echoes its response, a coherent transformation, an existential wonderment. I readily accept fantasy's invitation, time travel. I want to discover causation, explain anomalies, share it with you. One soul cannot endure this alone. We shall seize all challenges. Wrapped in silk, enveloped together, we will travel unknown stratospheres. Thank you.
Loved it. Loved the transformation bit. It was fantastic. Thank you. Mark, I think Forrest has joined us. He must have heard me calling him from the ether.
Yeah, I can see him with his hat on there.
That's it.
Can you unmic yourself or unmute yourself? You got to unmute yourself. Can you do that for us?
Yes.
So thanks for joining us. How are things going over there?
Pretty good. It's Earth Day, and the town is full of people for that. And then there's this Sierra Poetry Festival, and it's also big. People are so glad to be out of, their houses in the pandemic.
Of course. Would you grace? I mean, we already played two of your poems, but would you grace us maybe with one more?
Yeah, sure. I felt awful not hearing the other people and just coming in so late like this.
That's
Does
okay.
anybody else want to read first? No.
No, we'll resume after you've read.
All right. So, did you do Immigrant C?
Yes,
Yes.
We did, but there's nothing quite like seeing you read it rather than hearing it.
All right. Well, here's Immigrant C. So these poems are influenced by Sangam poetry, which is poetry that came out of southern India 2,000 years ago, in which it was considered not only unethical, but impossible to write about subjectivity, the self, without incorporating the landscape around the self, which is participatory in our perceptions and emotions. And there are 5 major landscapes in southern India that the poems treat, and they happen to be the same 5 landscapes of California. So my poems, inspired by Sangam poetry, take place in California. This is Immigrant C, and I'm married now to an immigrant from South India, a sculptor named Ashwini Bhatt. And I was thinking about this time of unprecedented migration, and of the sea as a constant immigrant to every shore that is welcomed on its arrival. Immigrant Sea. Aroused by her inaccessibility, he aches for more of her life, to live inside him, watching the breakers, standing so close he can feel heat coming off her wet scalp. What is his relation to this person before him, so familiar and foreign? The way he searches out her face, he searches out himself. Gusts thrash crests of swell, spring grasses twirl circles in the sand where they stand without speaking. She wants him to know it's all charged, even grass positive, pollen negative. So when grass waves, it sweeps the air for pollen. He feels electricity all around, as though the wild drama of the coming storm were already aware of them, foreigners on this shore. Little sapphire blue flowers speckle the dunes. He wonders if he has let himself flatten out into a depthless sheet, like escalator stairs, whether in the end he'll disappear underground without the smallest lurch of resistance. But when her lavish face turns toward him, beaming, the corners of her eyes wind wet, he yields to that excess. He reappears to himself. Thanks. Nice to see you all.
Thank you, Forrest. Thanks so much for taking time to make this happen.
Thanks for having me and for all of Lit Balm's programming.
Well, thanks. Yeah, as I said earlier today, I think this is episode number 92 or something like that we've done.
Amazing. Yeah.
And we continue to go strong. We have next weekend is a whole Tupelo Books Festival, Saturday and Sunday. And we have a bunch of your friends coming up as well.
I see a bunch of my friends here already too. Nice.
So back to Cassandra. Cassandra, do we still have a couple more open mics?
Of course, we have scintillating open mic. We have brilliant open micers left. So Carolyn is next, and we all love Carolyn's poetry. So I'm excited to hear her read something, please.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you so much for this wonderful program with Liana and Aliki and Joe and Forrest. So good to see you all. Sort of in response to the imagery of trees that we've been having, and also Aliki's Fulbright, congratulations on that. I just was able, I received a Fulbright 2 years ago and had to postpone it because of COVID, and it has been reactivated. And so at the end of May, I am departing for the first 2 months of a Fulbright grant to Salvador, Bahia, Brazil. And so I also hope to return to the island of Itaparica, which is in Bahia, and which is where this poem is set. It's called Eguns, which is an Afro-Portuguese word for, it's sort of the Eguns are these ancestral spirits who are celebrated in these amazing, elaborate, all night long rituals that are now practiced only in a few communities, Afro-Brazilian communities on the island of Itaparica, and also in their original land, which was Benin and Nigeria. So this is sort of in the voice of the Eguns. So that's, excuse me for daring to speak in that voice, but the moon is our sun. We untangle ourselves at twilight from the gameleiras' dangling roots. We slide across dune grass to the breakwater and labor all evening among the brackish underwater knees of the manguezal. The glow of ghost balloons follows us across the sky. We step into the tidal streams. Iridescence of kelp and Medusa jellyfish twine around our ankles. We follow the brilliant ripples to the undersides of stones the blue fluorescence of ancient constellations. Night herons croak overhead. Their wings trail the echoes of languages barely understood, syllables that hardly survived the oceanic crossing. We wade out past where the ancestors' nets were cast. We sing in low tones that skim the near-shore waves, spangled scatterings of lights swaying our bodies in sea foam. Our feet press into silt, lace billows of skirts swirl in currents that swell and ebb. Echoes of the circle dance of planets, we shake out the constellations' nets of our silvered catch. The spiral nebulae loosen and unfurl above us. Names of the orishas we chant in the afterglow to the veiled gesturings of stars. The iris arc of souls, those gone on before us, glimmer on the horizon. Thank you.
Beautiful, thank
Thanks so
you.
much.
And have fun in Brazil.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
great.
And our last person for open mic is a wonderful way to end open mic. It's Indran, of course, and he's going to read something fabulous too.
Right.
You need to unmute, Andrew.
So great to see you all. And Forrest, wonderful to hear your poem and to hear your news. Congratulations, congratulations. I'll read a poem from my new book, 10,000 Steps Against the Tyrant, a poem I haven't read before in public. It's called The Lesson, and it goes like this. What would Jose Emilio say if I was to show up this morning at his home on Avenida Progreso to eat some red yolked eggs and chat about the sand falling in the hourglass, the beauty of a few rivers? Or my dearest Yeats, shall I stroll with him along Fleet Street to spy a shop window with a fountain and a bobbing ball bobbing on its way to Innisfree, to that small house of clay and wattles made? Shall I offer Tom Stearns Eliot a peach? We sit in a cafe on a cobblestone Boston street, and the yellow fog is rubbing its muzzle on the window pane. Shall I pop over to Dallas, ask for a seat on the first flight once flights resume, saying I would like to land again in Heathrow, where my adventure in the West began? Who did I read right off the tarmac? Thomas Hardy, Dylan Thomas, A Shropshire Lad, The Prelude, and The Charge of the Light Brigade? Who turned my heart to a quiver, tears pouring down cheeks as Othello, naive, foolish, fell for Iago's trap and killed Desdemona, his beloved? Killed, murder most foul. Did he deserve to end it all? Did Shakespeare have any other ruse available to finish his tragedy to our satisfaction? Would we accept solitary confinement, parole after 5 years for the Moor? Forgiveness is a tough field to hoe. Death will take the noble and the weak, scoundrels and saints. But the grand old verses will survive as long as we live, pottering about the house, confined, COVID raging outside. I'm lucky I've not been blinded or run out to the moor, hoodwinked by my own daughters. I'm lucky to have lived and to have loved and all that jazz. I'm lucky to have a son and a daughter, to have helped them grow, to see their drawings on my heart. I'm lucky to have shared the house with my mother again these last few years, and pray that she will stay strong and go only when she is ready. I'm lucky that what I have learned, I teach. These lines, my class. Thank you.
Amazing. Such rich intertext. So many of my favorite intertexts in there, and such a brilliant way to end open mic. Thank you, Indra. We always love it when you read.
Thank you.
And Mark, I think that's the close of the show. People can watch the recording as well, which is always up on the website.
Absolutely. And there's one more thing that I have got to read tonight, which kind of feeds into what Indran and Forrest showed us tonight. There's a little poem of my own, which is called All the Seals Have Sung Here, Even a Few Whales. No one couples with anyone else on this rock. Not a single seal steps out of place. They line up in harmony to listen to each other's tales of Atlantic oceans, Pacific storms, China seas, wakes and worries. All these islands in streams converging in one song, and yet something seems off, half balanced, slightly askew. The voices merge and blend and conjoin. Ask anyone who's been there. It's when the whales join in that everything comes together in the ceremony of living. And so thank you everyone for this wonderful.
Hey.
Thank you.
What a joy to hear, you know, these amazing poets, Aliki and Liana from Greece, Athens, Greece. I think it's probably about 1 a.m. in the morning over there now. To listen to Joe Safdie, and thanks so much, Forrest, for showing up. And it was a great show. Thank you again, and see you next time, next Saturday, for the Tupelo Books first day of the weekend. Don't forget, it's Saturday and Sunday next week, so we'll see you there. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
Thanks
you,
a lot, everybody.
Thanks
Thanks
so
for
much.
coming.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Love and poetry.
Yes.
Bye.
Love you, my Lit Balm family.
Peace,
Bye.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks so much,
Bye,
everybody.
everyone.
Licky,
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Joe.
Bye.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.